This is pretty unbelievable. However, considering what's going on in our country right now, it's actually not that unbelievable. Let me know where you're tuning in from, city, state, and if you live in one of the southern border states, let me know. If you're tuning in from another country, region, province, let me know. And I'd like to get your feedback and your input to see if this is happening in your country. Let me start before we talk about the $87 million hotel bill. 87 million, that's a heck of a room charge, right? 87 million. They had one too many of the little drink bottles from the mini bar. So let me know where you're tuning in from, and let me know if you live in one of the southern states. Let me know where you're tuning in from either way. $87 million just got awarded to a hotel group by the administration of the president, and that is to secure 1,239 rooms and or beds for the people who are entering the country illegally at the southern border. Now, whether you want to believe there's a problem at the southern border or not, I don't think that's up for debate anymore. Prior to our current president's inauguration, you had 7,000 families trying to cross the border. The 1 month prior to the inauguration, you had about 7,000 families trying to cross. 1 month after inauguration, that number nearly tripled. So the question is, why did that number triple? Okay, so that's one thing we want to ask. What led to that number tripling? There are people who are at the border who outright are saying that they chose to come here now because they did not want to try to come while President Trump was in office. They were hoping and waiting for President Trump to get out of office, and they were waiting for President Biden to get into office then they would make their attempt to enter the United States illegally. That is not my opinion. That is coming from people on the ground at the border that they are speaking to. So don't take my word for it. Go and just do a quick Google search and you'll find the stories of the people who are legitimately saying they were afraid to try to come in during Trump's leadership, and they're trying now. They feel better about it now. So let's go back to the $86.9 million check that the White House just wrote to this hotel group to help house this triple. The numbers are tripled now, and now they're getting even worse. Now, another month removed, so they have nowhere to house these folks when they're coming in, because the numbers are tripling. So, with the numbers tripling and now having to spend nearly $100 million on hotels, I think at this point it's hard to say that there's not an issue at the border. I think opinion now has to be removed from it, and you look at the facts. The numbers are tripled. They don't have enough room. There are still kids in cages. Don't let anyone fool you. There's still kids in cages. And now there's overflow to the point where they can't keep up. So now they got to get hotels for the families. There's something that's very glaring that I'm going to say that I don't think is not being said in this whole thing, because everyone's focusing on the bill. Everyone's saying $87 million for hotels. I don't know. I mean, like, wow. That's a lot of money. So it is a lot of money. The other thing that no one's talking about is we're sending 2.5 million doses of the vaccine from the U.S. to Mexico. Some people are upset about that because obviously there's still people. There are an enormous amount of people here in the U.S. who have still not received their vaccine. So some people are upset that we're sending 2.5 million doses to Mexico. The White House has confirmed that. The reasoning for that has not been declared, but 2.5 million doses to Mexico being sent over from the U.S. Now, let's go back to the $86.9 million hotel bill to house the people that are entering our country illegally and now are in the... So these are for the hotel rooms are for the people who get caught, right? So of now the numbers have tripled of the amount of people that are trying to come over, hence the triggering of the $87 million bill to pay for hotel rooms to house these people. The structure and the logistics and the infrastructure they have right now to house the people isn't enough. So I'm pretty sure that there are homeless veterans on our streets across the country right now that would love a hotel room. I might be wrong, and correct me if you think I am wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we have some men and women that fought for our country, fell on hard times for whatever reason, and are living on the streets. Our headquarters are in New York City. We see homeless veterans on the streets, alleged veterans. Of course, we don't sit there and card them or, check their paperwork and DD 214, but many of these people are claiming to be veterans. And it's no secret, right? We know that there's a major issue with veterans in our country that are homeless living on the streets. What about that? What about that? Am I wrong about saying, where are the hotel rooms? Listen, I'm a taxpayer. Many of you here watching are taxpayers. We all have to do our part. And I don't think anyone watching, me, myself, or you watching here, whether you're, from the United States or not, I don't think anyone would have a problem if someone said, listen, your tax dollars are going to help put homeless veterans in a hotel, get them a roof over their head, let them get cleaned up, and maybe get a meal in their stomach, and maybe get them a set of clothes, and then set them up with something to get them back on their feet. If you said we're spending nearly $100 million of your tax dollars on that, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Maybe some people would, but I can't imagine that the good people watching this show right now would have a problem with it. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Let me hear from you. Now, nearly $100 million to house people that are coming into this country illegally at an alarming rate. So much so we've run out of space to hold them, and there was a pretty significant infrastructure, if you would, but that infrastructure can no longer hold them, can no longer handle the volume. So wouldn't you think that... So let me relate it to this. If you have a pipe that is leaking, okay, and it's a problem, and you have a bucket under the leak catching the water that's leaking, most people, myself and you good people watching this right now, would most likely say, okay, we got to figure out how to shut the water off. Whether we have to go to the main and shut the water main off, we got to go out to the street, break the street open, shut the main, whatever we need to do, we need to shut the water flow off so it stops dripping. And we got this bucket here right now catching the dripping water. And that's what most of us would do. I don't think most of us would just say, when the leak gets 3 times worse, let me say, maybe you were dripping out at like a gallon a minute, but now it's dripping out at 3 gallons, 4 gallons a minute. Now at this point, wouldn't you be like, okay, now we really got to figure out how to shut the water off? Because this is now a significant leak. This is a problem. I don't know if anyone would say, okay, can someone just get a bigger bucket? A bigger bucket? So can someone just go get a tub? Can we get a big tub here? Yeah. And not worry about the water flow. Because what is eventually going to happen if you're not handling the actual water flow? You going and getting a bigger bucket, $87 million on hotel rooms, is going to just lead to what? What's going to happen? The flow of water is going to now increase. Eventually, the bigger bucket that you got to hold this excess flow of water is not going to be enough, and you're going to need to what? Get an even bigger bucket. So now, probably within just a matter of a few weeks, we're going to see another, most likely, $80 to $100 million go out for additional housing for the people that are coming over, because the numbers are now projected to not just triple like they've done now, but to quadruple. I'm no plumber, but I know when there's a leak and the leak is getting worse, the solution is not a bigger bucket. The solution is to shut the water off. However, it seems like right now, the solution at the border is not figure out how to shut the water off. In this case, this extreme excess flow of people coming in now at an alarming rate. And their solution at the border is, okay, we're going to just make the bucket bigger. Make the catch bucket bigger. So now we're going to start housing. And now when you start housing these folks, you are obligated to provide them with services. You're obligated to provide them with healthcare services. You're provided to provide them with mental health services. There's food services. There's all kinds of service. You can't just take tens of thousands of people, of families, and throw them in a hotel room and say, good luck. You can't do that. There has to be a system in place, a logistics plan to help these people when they're in the hotel room. You got to feed them, clothe them, medical attention, everything. Got to shut the water off. We got to shut the water off. And this is you could ask a child about this problem. You can give a child this scenario and ask them, what would you do? Just keep getting a bigger bucket as the water flow keeps getting, more and more forceful, more gallons per minute. And they're going to say, why don't you just shut the water off? Why don't you figure out how to shut the water off? Either figure out where to shut the water off or plug the leak. Plug the leak and put it at bay. And it's not happening. It's not happening. I don't know how anyone who forget about political party. Forget about, Democrat, Republican, whatever. As American, first of all, God bless America that we have 20,000 people, 20,000 families a month trying to illegally enter this country. I don't know if there's any country in the world that people are trying to enter illegally at that rate. I don't know of one. If there is, please let me know. But I believe the U.S. is probably the only place. for the people to say that this is not a crisis, that this is not a problem, they don't understand the true economic impact and ramifications of this amount of people flooding into the country. It's an alarming rate. So people who say that it's not a crisis at the border, I'm not going to sit here and say, make it a political thing. Because I know one party is saying there's a crisis and the other party is saying there's no crisis. There's an issue. There's an issue at the border that needs to be resolved. And as it keeps going, it is going to become a bigger and bigger problem for the American taxpayer. You folks, myself, and of course, millions of others. If you ignore it and try to say, well, I'm a Democrat and I can't really talk about the issue at the border, so I'm just going to sit here and say, there's no issue at the border. Okay, well, if you're a taxpayer, it's a problem and you're eventually going to get the brunt of this. So remove all the political stuff and realize that this is a problem for every hardworking American that needs to be resolved. Now we're sending COVID vaccines out of the country when people here haven't even been vaccinated. How is that? There's still elderly people in this country, people with compromised immune systems in this country that haven't gotten their vaccines. They're waiting. And now we're sending millions of vaccines to Mexico. I don't know and they haven't released why they're doing that. Now keep in mind, when we talk about logistics, these 19,000, 20,000 plus people and families coming over every month, they're being tested for COVID. That's a cost, right? COVID tests aren't free. That's a cost. And what if they're positive? Okay, maybe they're negative. Now they're here. Are we going to start giving 20,000 people a month, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 people a month COVID vaccines? Because they came here and they're here and we don't know what their fate's going to be. So are we going to now start vaccinating these folks? I'm not saying they're not deserving of vaccines. I'm just saying, what about the Americans, the elderly, the immunocompromised? What about them? We have homeless veterans on our streets. Homeless, sick, hungry, no COVID vaccine. What about them? We're spending $87 million on hotel rooms for people who are coming into this country illegally and going to give them all the services that you can think of, including COVID tests and potentially COVID vaccines. And our homeless veterans are starving, sleeping on our streets at night. I don't know. If you're an American citizen, political affiliation aside, that can't sit well with you. Let me know how that sits with you. With seniors and other people at risk waiting for their vaccines while we're sending vaccines to other countries, and veterans sleeping on the streets while people who are coming into this country illegally for a better life, they're coming here for a better life. They're coming here for a chance of the American dream. I get that. No one doesn't get that. We get that. Right? I know. I mean, if you ask certain people, America's the worst country, the most racist country, and all these other things. Right? If you ask some people, they'll tell you that. But there's tens of thousands of people like putting their life on the line, putting the lives of their children on the line, trying to break in here. Name me a country where that's going on. So, I don't know. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. How do you guys feel about people from another country being put before Americans on multiple fronts that I talked about here? How do you feel about that? If you're an American, and I know we care about people from other countries who are struggling, but if you're American, how do you feel about that? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with Americans being put on the back burner? Are you okay with people who fought for our country and our freedom being left on the streets? It's not like they're saying we're going to get the hotels for the illegal immigrants. And then once all of them are in a hotel, we're going to then move to the homeless veterans. No, they're not even talking about homeless veterans. They're just saying, we got to do this. $87 million. Check written, out, bam, done. I don't know, guys. Let me know what you think. It's disturbing, it's troubling, and would love to know what your feedback is. As Americans, put your political affiliation aside for a second, and just think, if you had a son, a daughter, or a grandson or granddaughter that served our country, maybe fell upon some hard times, whether it's substance, mental illness, whatever, PTSD, and now is homeless living on the street, and you knew that, how would you feel right now based on what's going on? How would you feel knowing that there's that many people entering the country illegally every single day, and our tax dollars are being diverted to take care of that issue, but it's not even being taken care of? How do you feel about the fact that they're just trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound? They're just, trying to put a bigger bucket under the leak as the leak gets worse and worse. How do you guys feel about that? And should something be done? What should be done? Let me know. Listen, it looks like things are getting worse before they're getting better, but we still live in the greatest country in the world. Don't ever forget that. And make sure this evening, when you go to bed, just give thanks for one thing. Give thanks for one thing. That you're in a country where you have the freedom to go where you want, do what you want, and you're living in a country that other people are literally willing to give their lives to try to get into. So just think about that. All right, folks. God bless America.